It is June 10th, 323 BCE. Alexander the Great, the man who conquered Persia, Egypt and reached the edge of India, lies in a palace in Babylon. He's just 32 years old. 12 days ago, he came down with a fever. Now he can't even speak. Outside his room, tens of thousands of soldiers wait in line, not to salute their king one last time, but simply to say goodbye. Because everyone knows they're watching the end of an era. By nightfall, he is dead. No wound killed him, no enemy blade, no arrow, no battlefield injury from a career spent at the front of every charge. The greatest military mind the ancient world ever produced died in a bed, in a palace, of something nobody around him fully understood, and nobody since has been able to definitively prove. Was it illness? Poison, a broken body finally giving out, or something deliberate, planned by someone standing very close to him? 2,300 years later, the question is still open. The ancient sources agree on the basic timeline. Alexander fell ill after a banquet. Accounts in Plutarch's Life of Alexander and Arrian's Anabasis both describe a fever developing around June 1st. 323 BCE, worsening steadily over nearly 2 weeks before his death. Both sources draw on earlier records, including the now lost Royal Diaries, official court documents kept by Alexander's personal staff, which, if authentic, represent the closest thing we have to a contemporary medical record. 3 things about his death have driven debate for centuries. First, the symptoms. Ancient accounts describe high fever, progressive weakness, increasing inability to move or speak, and a notably slow deterioration over 12 days, an unusually long dying for what some historians assumed was simple typhoid or alcohol-related illness. Classicist and physician John Marr, writing in the journal Ancient History Bulletin, has pointed out that the symptom progression is more consistent with certain poisonings or neurological conditions than with the rapid course typical of acute typhoid. Second, the body. Ancient sources make a remarkable claim that Alexander's corpse showed no signs of decomposition for 6 days after death. Romantic legend made this a mark of divinity. A 2019 paper by Dr. Catherine Hall of the University of Otago offered a different explanation. That Alexander may have suffered from Guillain-Barré syndrome, a neurological disorder that can cause ascending paralysis while leaving the patient conscious and aware. Her argument: he may not have been dead when they thought he was. The absence of decomposition, a sign of apparent death mistaken for the real thing. Third, the political timing. Alexander died leaving no clear, capable heir and no settled succession plan. Within hours of his death, his generals, the Diadochi, began manoeuvring for power in what would become decades of brutal warfare. Several of them had documented motives. Antipater's family in particular has drawn historical suspicion, with ancient sources including Plutarch recording persistent rumours of poison delivered in a mule's hoof, supposedly brought to Babylon by Antipater's son Iolaus, who served as Alexander's cupbearer. Picture that final banquet. June 1st, 323 BCE. Alexander is celebrating. A fleet is being prepared for an Arabian campaign. There is wine. There is always wine. And Alexander's relationship with it had grown heavier over the years since the death of his closest companion Hephaestion, 8 months earlier, a loss that visibly broke something in him. He drinks deeply. By some accounts, he drinks all night. By the following morning, the fever has begun. For 12 days, the greatest general in the ancient world loses ground the way his enemies never could make him lose it, steadily, incrementally, without a single victory. He is moved to the palace gardens when he requests fresh air. His officers, frightened and desperate, reportedly force entry into his chamber to see him. The Royal Diaries record that he recognized them but could no longer speak, managing only to raise his eyes and move his hand in acknowledgement. Here is where the mystery deepens into something genuinely unresolved. The poison theory has circulated since antiquity, and 2 modern toxicologists, Leo Shep and colleagues, published a detailed 2014 analysis in the journal Clinical Toxicology, proposing that white hellebore, a plant known to ancient Greeks capable of causing exactly the symptom pattern described, including a prolonged, agonizing decline, could have been the agent used, potentially dissolved in wine. The slow onset would explain the 12-day timeline. The political opportunity was unambiguous. But the typhoid theory remains the most widely accepted among mainstream historians. A 1998 analysis by bacteriologist David Oldak and colleagues argued the symptom progression was consistent with typhoid fever, complicated by bowel perforation, made worse by Alexander's significant alcohol consumption, his weakened state after years of campaigning, and a wound to his lung suffered years earlier in India that had never fully healed. And then there is the Guillain-Barré hypothesis, the possibility that Alexander was paralyzed, conscious and aware while the world around him began preparing for his funeral, that he heard the preparations, that the man who had conquered the known world spent his final days unable to move, unable to speak, misdiagnosed as dead days before he actually was. No hypothesis has been proven. Each one fits some of the evidence and strains against the rest. So what killed Alexander the Great? What we know, he died in Babylon on June 10th, 323 BCE, aged 32, after a 12-day illness that followed a banquet, in circumstances that immediately and conveniently served the ambitions of people positioned very close to him. What we don't know, and cannot know without evidence that almost certainly no longer exists, is whether that illness was natural, accelerated, or engineered. Then, a man who had never lost a battle dying in a bed, watched by an empire that had no idea what came next. Now, historians, physicians, and toxicologists still arguing in peer-reviewed journals over the body of a man dead for 2 millennia. Typhoid or poison, paralysis or corruption. A death that reshaped the entire ancient world and left not a single definitive answer. Maybe that is the most fitting end for a man who spent his entire life defying what was supposed to be possible. Even in dying, Alexander the Great refused to be fully explained. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked this video, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.